Council has adjourned from closed session, and the direction of the matters discussed will now be considered. CS1, Edith Cavell. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Councillor Watson, Deputy Mayor. Thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Watson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Noble, that the mayor and deputy clerk be authorized to enter into a 5-year extension agreement between the municipality and 1788764 Ontario Inc. in accordance with the terms set out in the current agreement.
All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. CS2, 42343 Fruit Ridge Line, St. Thomas Lease Agreement. Mover and a seconder, please. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Connors. Thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Councillor Connors, that staff proceed as directed.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. CS3, 5277 Quaker Road OLT Appeal. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Bachman, Deputy Mayor. Thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Bachman, seconded by Deputy Mayor Noble, that legal counsel be instructed to consent to or seek an adjournment of the hearing scheduled for June 23rd, 2025, to allow time for a decision to be rendered on the new temporary use zoning bylaw amendment application submitted by the appellants, and that if the appellants do not agree to adjourn the hearing and/or if the tribunal refuses to adjourn the June hearing, that legal counsel be instructed to proceed to the June hearing on a contested basis and call evidence to support council's decision to refuse the applications.
All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Central Elgin Planning Office Agreement. Mover and a seconder, please. Council or Deputy Mayor and Councillor Bachman. Thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Councillor Bachman, that the Chief Administrative Officer proceed as directed.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. CS5, Maple Street. Mover and a seconder, please. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Connors. Thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Councillor Connors, that staff be directed to initiate the expropriation process to acquire ownership of the lands referred to as the Maple Street right-of-way as outlined in confidential staff report ICS 1115.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Mover and a seconder for the added item, the policing contract. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Griffin. Thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Councillor Griffin, that the Chief Administrative Officer proceed as directed.
We will now break until 7 p.m. Thank you. Oh, sorry. All those in favor? Opposed? Now we can break till 7 p.m. Thank you. The gallery, we're resuming a meeting that started at 5 p.m. I would ask those who are here to stand and join with us for the singing of the national anthem. Thank you. Thank you. The municipality of Central Elgin acknowledges that it is located on the land of the McKee Treaty that was signed by the Wyandot and by Anishinaabe nations, including ancestors of Chippewas of Thames First Nation. It is also the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Attawandaronk, and Mississauga Nation. These First Nations continue to provide ongoing stewardship of the land and waters in the municipality of Central Elgin. Firstly, let me thank those who are here in the gallery this evening. We have 3 delegations. The first one is from the Port Stanley Village Association. Brent, Barr, if you could come to the front, please. And may I remind you, sir, just to push the button so that your microphone is on for those that are joining us virtually. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, councillors, and staff. Well, I know that you might know who I am. I'm sure there's a few people here that are attending here and maybe at home that don't know who I am. So my name is Brent Barr. I am the chair of the Port Stanley Village Association, and which is also known as the PSVA. I very much appreciate your time tonight to hear from the association on several topics we strongly feel that are important while you're going through the budget process. Let me outline them quickly, and then I'll follow up with a bit more detail in a few minutes. And of course, if you have any questions whatsoever, I'd be happy to answer them and give you more detail accordingly. The PSVA topics this evening that we want to speak about are utilizing the Port Investment Survey to guide your budget-related decisions, the PSVA support for Council to create the Community Grants Program, confirmation of Little Beach Washroom being sent to staff for costing, requests that Central Elgin include the Little Beach mobility mats in the Municipal Asset Management Plan, and finally, a huge thank you to both staff and Council for all of your support in Port Stanley over the past year and from what we can see over the year to come. And I want to start off with a thank you because really that Central Elgin, both Council and staff, have put forth a lot of effort in the last little while that is making a significant difference in Port Stanley. And without that support, things would not get done as quickly, as successfully, and as impactfully for Central Elgin. Within the recently completed Port Investment Survey, Council and staff have been working on several of the projects that were ranked very highly within it, but also several others that were not mentioned. For example, supportive accessibility, Central Elgin's support for our physically challenged, and making Port Stanley more accessible through all the support given to the Port Stanley Village Association's committee, access, inclusion, and age in place related to the Little Beach mobility mats has been so appreciated. And I'll get into more about that in a second. The conservation issues, where you continue to work with the 200 Trees Project. I know there's a few members here today. And how that committee has made a huge inroad, and it's going to last for generations. Geese management and placement of the dory poles and flags, working alongside Colleen from Forever Wild Rescue. Incredible work there. The no swimming area. It's my understanding that Council and staff have been reviewing options to protect residents and tourists from areas that pose increased risk to swimmers on the main beach. Outdoor music venue, your support for this amazing group that is working hard to make this a reality in our community. Infrastructure, your continued support on infrastructure such as Front Street and the upcoming work on Williams, Maud, and Bessie will make a huge difference to the water management in that area. And of course, the permanent washrooms at Little Beach. The PSVA understands that a motion that was brought forward by Councillor Graham back in November was turned down at that moment. But that was to investigate the cost of the washrooms and where it was headed. It is now our understanding that the Finance Committee on February the 24th has recommended that that move forward to staff to take a look at the costing, and we thank you for that. We know that that will be met with huge support by our community, as it was the #1 item on the survey. And of course, related to that, we know that Council has also approved increased frequency for cleaning up of garbage in areas around that, which will be much appreciated during our busy season. So that is the first part of the thank you. The next one, as I want to move to, is the mobility mats for Little Beach. As mentioned, Council supported this initiative, and it's coming to reality very soon. Ministry of Seniors and Accessibility in Ontario approved a grant of $49,255, odd number, I know, to purchase mobility mats for Little Beach in 2025. The purchase of these mats is in works, and installation will be moved on, as apparently was previously agreed to, by Central Elgin doing the attachment and putting them on the beach and taking care of them. And for those in attendance, the mobility mats are the same ones that are at Main Beach that help individuals in wheelchairs and mobility get to the water. That leads to our request, the request that Central Elgin include the mobility mats in your municipal asset management plan going forward. They will become your mats. We're simply working with the ministry to get them in place. The next one is the PSVA encouraged Council to support the creation of the Community Grants Operating Fund. And my understanding is that's now been placed into the budget, which we're really happy for. Just for everybody here, this discussion that was done on the operating grants was done and will impact many groups within Central Elgin. This would encourage local groups to organize, plan, submit applications, and obtain funding that the communities would strongly benefit from. Being driven by grassroots and will make such a difference. So thank you very much for your foresight in that area. We hope that that fund will be continued on in years to come. And lastly, the Port Stanley Village Association Port Investment Research. We want to make sure that that's used for decision-making going forward for this year and many years to come. The PSVA requests that any discussions and decisions related to Port Stanley, that you include that port investment research as part of the discussions and decision-making that the community desires. As stated back in the December 16th Council meeting, this research is statistically valid and as a result can be used to guide decision-making. And I want to reiterate at that point where I said I and the PSVA would be more than happy to work with any community that would like to implement similar research in their areas so that they can bring forward areas by ranked order to you to consider in the future. So I want to close this evening with just a reminder of what I've said to you. 1, utilize the Port Investment Survey to guide your budget and related decisions. 2, the PSVA supports the creation of the Community Grants Operating Fund. 3, confirmation of Little Beach washrooms going to staff for costing. Number 4, request that Central Elgin include the mobility maps in the municipal asset management plan. And finally, and very importantly, a huge thank you to staff and Central Elgin Council for all you've done for Port Stanley in the past and what I see is going to happen in the coming year. It is so very much appreciated. I turn it over to the mayor now. If he has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. If not, I can let you guys go on because you've been meeting for an awful long time today already.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Brent. As always, we appreciate your engagement and the engagement of the PSVA. I don't want to presuppose the budget because Mr. Jansoon, I think, is going to present it in about 15 minutes. But a lot of the pieces that you mentioned, you'll be pleased and know that they are included in the document. I'm not saying that we've solved every problem, but I think also that with some thought into some of the larger issues that we have some time to discuss. But a lot of them, I think, are good news, and I appreciate you bringing them to the attention of the group because the council worked hard on it, the finance committee worked hard on it, and Mr. Jensen and the staff, of course, are doing everything they can to support not just Port Stanley, but all the communities. Councillor, any questions for Mr. Barr? Deputy Mayor Noble.
Through you, Mayor, I'd like to thank Brent for all the effort that he puts into the Port Stanley Villagers.
Thank you very much. Any other questions, comments? Appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Stay tuned, Brent. Delegation number 2, proposed Erie Rest Beach parking lot capital project. Welcome back, Mr. Finlan.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I just wanted to say to the PSVA, well done. Our band shell's number 5 on your survey. Thank you very much, Brent, for all that. You did an amazing job. Good evening, Mayor Sloan, Central Elgin Council and staff. Thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is Ed Finlan. I live at 547 West Edith Cavell Boulevard in Port Stanley. I am here tonight as a spokesperson for our community group, Friends of Erie Rest Beach. Many of those folks are here tonight, and many are at home watching from Florida and other places. I wish I was there. We are very, very, very concerned and have serious objections to any building of additional parking at Erie Rest Beach. We retained an environmental municipal law firm, Garrett and Pickford, and all members of council received that letter. Thank you, Delaney, for making sure everybody got it. And our lawyer, Mr. Alex Ciccone, is setting out the objections within the proposal. Mr. Ciccone concludes in that letter that the proposed parking lot build would not be consistent with the municipality's official plan. This area is designated as a dynamic beach area. He sets out the guidelines under the Provincial Policy Statement, PPS 2024, that relates to protecting public health and safety. No studies have been completed to mitigate risks associated with a flooding hazard, a dynamic beach hazard, and erosion hazard for the proposed lot. In addition to those items, the residents of this area only recently found out it was to be discussed at a Finance Committee meeting here on March the 17th. No one held any meetings with us about the proposal. It's fair to say the community is very concerned with the lack of information and public involvement prior to any proposal before council. We encourage council to vote this proposal down. I now ask you to turn your attention to our presentation on the overhead screen. And thank you, Delaney, for putting that up there. And I'll just run through this with you briefly. The concerns raised by neighbors and the public. We've had a number of meetings about this. The Planning Act and Provincial Policy Statement, under the Central Elgin Official Plan, the Land Use Plan, as indicated, Schedule G, designates this property, the Erie Rest Beach property, as dynamic beach, not community facility, nor parking lot, and not a potential public parking area under Schedule G3 for transportation improvements. Areas that are identified for potential public parking are located in the village center, the public boat launch at Kettle Creek Harbor west side, the berm, Kettle Creek Harbor east side, and Little Beach east of the berm. Justification and need for a new parking lot. The current location has 8 to 10 spots. It's angled parking. It's located in a residential area with very narrow streets. And I'm sure the fire department would agree with me, an emergency vehicle is very difficult to get down. There's 4 blind turns. And the only time that this parking lot is packed is during the summer long weekends. And for 353 days of the year, it's pretty vacant. A transportation assessment study should be undertaken for safety. There are no sidewalks along this area down at the beach. Emergency fire trucks currently have difficulty assessing the road. I know this because I have friends who are volunteer firefighters. Removal of the natural ecosystem and cumulative impacts to flooding. The proposal will impact the environment, specifically the dune system, including plants and trees, which in turn impacts the bird habitat. Recent high water surges from Lake Erie flooded the area in 2019 and 2021, which is why technical studies need to be undertaken for the current proposal to include coastal engineering required by KCCA, environmental assessments required by MECP, stormwater impact assessment required by CE, and riparian impacts assessment, which is required by the property owners for insurance purposes and for the property evaluations. None of those have been done. This proposal will also impact not only the natural ecosystem, but will also create light pollution from parking lot lighting being on during the evening and overnight, which will impact adjacent property owners within a 1 kilometer radius. We've been in contact with the North Shore Resilience Group, and I know that group has appeared in front of council, Sarah Emmons, who's the director, and who's very interested in being involved in our restoration of dunes and natural habitat. That project goes from Port Glasgow to Long Point, and serious concerns about this additional parking lot. We can go to this. Removal of piping plover nesting area. Piping plovers, and this is a very serious point. Piping plovers are listed as endangered under the Canadian and Provincial Endangered Species Act, and also protected under the Migratory Birds Convention Act. Piping plovers nest exclusively on dry, sandy, or gravelly beaches with sparse vegetation. The piping plover residence has been established in this location of the proposed Erie Rest parking lot for the last several years. Unlike Main Beach and Little Beach, Erie Rest Beach is a unique area in Port Stanley in Elgin County where the endangered species return annually along the north shore of Lake Erie. There's huge studies going on with our neighbors across the lake. There's huge studies going on in Ontario. This bird has been identified at Long Point, it's been identified all up the beach. Piping plovers are threatened by habitat loss and degradation of coastal areas, including beaches and dunes, as well as changes in water levels, which increase the risk to protect the species. Case law, the town of South Bruce Peninsula, we go to the next slide, thank you. In 2019, the town of South Bruce Peninsula was convicted on 2 charges of damaging piping plover habitat, contrary to Section 10(1) of the Endangered Species Act, where it is an offense to damage or destroy an endangered or threatened species habitat. This is to be taken seriously. This is a serious problem. The charge related to mechanical raking with heavy equipment and bulldozing to level the sand and dunes performed by the town in 2007, and they were charged with $100,000. Over the past 50 years, the species had all but vanished from almost all known nest sites in the Great Lakes. After nearly 30-year absence, they returned to Ontario in 2007. Habitat loss and degradation threaten the species' survival and continuing recovery, and beach disturbance has been identified as a key threat to this habitat. The case law of town of South Bruce Peninsula, this case marked the first time the Ontario Court of Appeal had considered the meaning of damage to habitat under Section 10 of the Act. The Endangered Species Act plays a vital role in protecting not only endangered species like the piping plover, but also their habitats. In upholding the town's conviction for damaging piping plover habitat, the Ontario Court of Appeal has affirmed the legislature's intent to provide broad and absolute protections for the habitats of endangered species. This decision sent a clear message to governments, individuals, and industries that those who damage or destroy protected habitat contrary to the law will be held accountable. The steps that we've taken is to provide Central Elgin Council with our lawyer's letter, a recognized municipal and environmental law firm, and it has been copied to the Integrity Commissioner of Ontario, which was the advice of our lawyer, the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, and Kettle Creek Conservation Authority. This is all in the advice of our lawyer, which we followed. The Friends of Erie Rest Beach will be notifying these organizations about the lack of transparency to advise the community and individuals who asked to be notified. The impacts of this proposal to the natural and terrestrial environment and the flooding risks of this low-lying coastal area, which impacts adjacent properties by storm surges and fluctuating lake levels. If you level the dunes and you level this area, you're going to have flooding. In closing, Central Elgin's official plan and zoning does not support the proposed parking lot at Erie Rest Beach. An official plan amendment would be required for Central Elgin to change the land use from dynamic beach to a community facility, which would be a parking lot, which requires Central Elgin to consult and engage with the public and adjacent property owners. Technical studies have not been completed to identify the justification, need, and the impacts of this proposal to the natural environment, protection of the dynamic beach, sand dunes, traffic safety, which is a huge concern. I mentioned before blind corners that exist on the small road going down through cottages. And that's a number of people walking with kids to the beach. My own experience is finding a young man in a Ford 150 doing a high speed and me stopping him, taking pictures and calling the OPP. And it was right down that area. He could have killed a number of people. And that's serious stuff. And that happens all the time in the summer when you live down there. There's just too much traffic. And any destruction of habitat for endangered species such as the piping plover is a violation under both the Canadian and Prevention of Endangered Species Acts, and one that its Central Elgin Council must take seriously. In conclusion, thank you for your attention to these concerns. We all have a wonderful opportunity. We all have a wonderful opportunity tonight to make a difference. We have an opportunity to make Erie Rest Beach something special, something environmentally special for everyone. People can walk there, they can ride their bikes there. And maybe bike stands would be a good idea in the parking lot, rather than more vehicles. The municipality could erect signage that states the importance of these dune system and the wildlife that live in the area. By law enforcement on the long weekends. The only time that this is a huge issue is during those weekends. We know when they are, and we could do more enforcement or tow trucks. If people are having medical emergencies, if the fire department needs to get down there, those are serious concerns. And that road going down there in the summer is an issue because of cars and parking. They're not an ability for emergency vehicles potentially to get there. Building more parking spots is just going to increase that. It's not going to make it better. It's going to make it worse. So please vote no to this proposal. It's not even a legal parking lot as it stands right now, other than it's been there for a number of years. Over 250 posts and comments and 150 reactions were on Facebook opposing additional parking. And that has been all weekend long. So thank you for your time. I appreciate your time. Please vote no on this proposal and give this a great opportunity to do the right thing. Thank you very much. Any questions yet?
Thank you, Mr. Finlan. Thank you.
They all got my email transfers of $50.
Council, any questions for Mr. Finlan? Seeing none, I'm going to now ask Jodi Burness to come up regarding the project.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Ed. Appreciate it. One more visit and we're going to have a sign made specifically for you. So my friend from the Port 200 Committee, Ms. Burness, please, if you could just turn the microphone on.
Great.
And thank you.
Thank you. That was fantastic. I think you did look at my presentation, but that's fine. Good evening, council members, your worship. I live at 474 West Edith Cavell, which is about 500 meters to the east of the proposed parking lot. And so my comments are boots on the ground comments, opinions and arguments against the proposal to put any number of paid parking spaces in that particular area. The way I understand the proposal is that we're looking at a maximum of 58 spaces and something between 0 and that number. And currently, if you do a rough count, you're looking at an availability of 16 spaces. And that, of course, is a dirt area. There are no designated spaces, but if people are responsible, that's how many cars you can get in there fairly. And I would submit to you that that is more than enough. And you can summarize what I'm about to tell you with the title, "If You Build It, They Will Come." And what I mean by that is that to counter or to mitigate what is a perceived traffic or parking concern by creating and inviting more traffic is counterintuitive. Ultimately, those spaces will have to be paid. There has to be a paid parking in order to have it be even remotely feasible. And the minute that you have paid parking, what you are ultimately doing is you are inviting the public to come. And if the public is aware that there's going to be something in the range of 58 spaces, the perception is there's going to be that many people plus attend in that particular area. And what also happens, because I live there and I can tell you that people come down, those spaces are not available, they're annoyed, they drive quickly down Edith Cavell West, they don't they're not aware that Edith Cavell West and East don't connect. Then they use the roundabout, and then they're even more annoyed and they drive double that speed to get out of that particular area. Hazard, hazard, hazard. Additionally, as Mr. Finlay identified, that area, Edith Cavell West, quite frankly, is a poorly maintained road, if we can call it that. It has no sidewalks. Where the pavement ends is crumbled, it's falling apart. Where the sand would connect to those portions, it creates potholes. There is no designated parking spaces along that roadway, and of course, there's no designated bicycle paths. And so again, creating more traffic, you exacerbate what is already a traffic problem. That road is so narrow that hardly 2 cars can get by. And then when you add vehicles that park inappropriately on either side, you're again exacerbating an existing problem. The roads down to Erie Rest, of course, consist of Valley, Lower Spring, and Bartholomew. And as Mr. Finlay identified, again, he's cheated because he looked at my presentation. Those are winding, blind curves, very, very narrow. And the problem with that is that the subdivision of Kokomo, quite frankly, was advertised as steps to the beach. That's their marketing platform. And so when you have a developing and then and now continuing to develop subdivision, what you end up with is families that leave the Kokomo subdivision and they lug down beach paraphernalia, wagons, children that are walking hand in hand with no sidewalks. Where do they end up? They end up in the middle of the road. And then you have the traffic, as I previously described, annoyed, driving at reckless speeds. That is, and I can't believe it hasn't happened yet, but it's going to happen. You're going to have an accident that'll be catastrophic in some nature. You take that, you add more traffic, and I think you know what the end result will be. One of the esteemed members of tonight's council had mentioned that the idea was to mitigate the number of tickets or parking infractions that were issued for that 3-month period. Quite frankly, the reality is that's a revenue source. And so if you have a parking space where people they're invited to park, but there aren't any spaces available, now what you have is an increase in parking infractions. Thus, in order to address that, and the only way you can address parking infractions is by swift and consistent parking enforcement, that means now you got to pay more parking staff. Where is that money going to come from? Additionally, a greater public attendance at the beach is a concern because there are no amenities to support that kind of volume. There are 2 main concerns. The first is that there is no proper bathing or toileting area. I mean, it may sound quaint and rather rustic that people use the single porta potty in the area, but when you have an increase in that volume, where are those people supposed to properly cleanse their children? It's going to be in the lake. And let me tell you, that continues on the regular, that gets old. And that's something that's going to be a health concern ultimately. And secondly, of course, is that the more volume you have on that beach, now you better make sure that you've got a lifeguard on there. And I think we're all aware that at Erie Rest Beach, there is a very significant undertow. And that's a very relevant factor for anybody that lives in Port Stanley, especially on the heels of the tragedy that occurred last year at Main Beach with the drowning of a young man, Omar Buse. And that, of course, was meters from a tower that is staffed by highly skilled lifeguards. And so without that, ultimately, I would submit to you that what you are doing is you are inviting litigation that, quite frankly, would be I think that would be a very successful claim against the county for failing to provide those safeguards. In summary, if you build it, as I identified, they will come. And I would submit to you that they are going to come in numbers that you did not anticipate and certainly did not plan for. And that will lead, of course, to the physical erosion of Mother Nature's protection against the storm surge. And also it will affect and irreversibly affect and damage our peaceful and harmless enjoyment by those who live there and those who quietly visit there. And lastly, I will tell you that by paving paradise, you are not solving the problem for a few, you are creating more problems for the many. Thank you.
Order. Firstly, thank you very much, Jodi. It's equally passionate and informative. So I appreciate your presentation very much.
Thank you kindly.
Questions from the council? If I could just make one comment, we have 3 or 4 issues that we've had that have brought in, I would say, more than average when it comes to certain issues. This is one of them. 95% of the emails we received, constructive, interested, stating their point of view, collaborative. The 5% that aren't mar the whole situation. There's nothing you can do about it, but a couple were sent to one of my colleagues that I'd vote against it just in spite of that letter. Not that I'm going to, but the point is that if you see that kind of stuff, especially on social media, when a person on this council or a person of the Kettle Creek Conservation Area or any of their staff are targeted with questions about their integrity, then I think it's the group's responsibility to make sure that that's not on. Okay, so 95 is a good number. And as I say, I think that the rest of this council would agree that we get back to people when they contact us. We show them the respect that they show us. There always might be a few, but overall, I learned a lot in the whole process, as I'm sure a lot of others did, and from both your presentations tonight. So any other questions before we move on to our next piece? Okay, so stay tuned. Thank you. And I know one of the reasons that the gallery is actually here tonight is that this is actually the last meeting that our fire chief, Ray Ormerod, will be with us. Thank you, Jodi. I'd like to take a moment to recognize Fire Chief Ormerod, who, as I said, this will be his last meeting. He'll be retiring at the end of the month. And Chief Ormerod joined Central Elgin as fire chief in 2021, but I call it rejoined because he was a volunteer on the Yarmouth Center group, and I'm not sure what year, and we wouldn't want to age the chief, but he rejoined us during an incredibly challenging time as we're in the middle of a global pandemic. His leadership during this period was exceptional. His guidance and commitment were pivotal in helping our community navigate through unprecedented and turbulent times. Under his leadership, the Central Elgin Fire Rescue Team, comprising of 100 dedicated volunteer firefighters as well as 25 lifeguards, has continued to deliver top-tier fire services with rapid response times that the residents, businesses, and visitors of our community rely on every day. Chief Ormerod's passion for Central Elgin and his unwavering dedication to his profession have made a lasting impact. On behalf of the entire Central Elgin Council, we wish you the very best in your well-deserved retirement, Chief. And I want to thank you for your years of service and for your commitment to the safety and well-being of our community. You will be missed. Would you like to say a word, Chief?
Thank you, Mayor Sloan. Thank you very much for those kind words. And I cannot thank council enough, my fellow co-workers, directors, all of the staff of the municipality, and all of the citizens and the firefighters and lifeguards that I've worked with over these last few years. It has been an extreme honor and privilege to fulfill this role for me as I come close to the end of my career. And as I've said numerous times, the 4 years that I spent with the Yarmouth Center Station before I got fully involved in the fire service were the best 4 years of work, I will say, that I've ever had. The family gathering that's involved in the volunteer fire service is beyond reproach. And it was because of that dedication that the volunteers gave back to the community is what drove me more deeply into this profession, and ultimately what made me have a significant passion for coming back to this municipality. It was a true honor and privilege working with that group for the 4 years that I had, and I did have a true passion for wanting to come back here at some point in time within my career, and I can't tell you the honor it was to be able to finish out my career here. So thank you very much, council and staff, for your dedication, your trust, and your support for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. We have we have two more agenda items for those that are in the gallery. The next is requiring action correspondence. First, Yarmouth Plains Baptist Church. Could I get a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Griffin, Deputy Mayor Noble, thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Griffin, seconded by Deputy Mayor Noble, that the correspondence be referred to staff and considered as part of the community grant program as outlined in the 2025 budget.
Thoughts, questions? Okay with staff recommendation? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We have a report, and it is the budget. DFS 0325, I now invite David Jansen, our Director of Finance and Treasurer for the municipality, who will provide a brief presentation regarding the 25 proposed budget. Sir?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it is an honor to bring the 2025 proposed budget to council tonight. Special thank you to staff and the Finance Committee. I appreciate all your work over the last month or so. With that, we'll get started. It's a fairly short presentation. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to read the online budget, but we will touch on the major highlights within the budget here. So. Okay, thanks. We want to go over the budget approach just to give a comfort that we did a fairly thorough job on that budget. We did segment it, the budget. We looked at operating capital and finished up with water and wastewater. We had multiple reviews with the Finance Committee. Taxation was actually calculated and verified against MPAC. Salaries and benefits, it was zero-based budgeting, which means we actually looked at the staffing requirements to run the municipality. We reconciled the leases and contracts wherever possible. We used trending with 5 years actuals and 5 years budget for anything consumable within the municipality. There were quite a bit of accounts. We had 4,600 items to review. And we tried to build financial awareness by adding schedules to the budget this year. So for the capital, we compiled, okay, that's all right. For capital, we compiled the carryover from 2024, and we introduced new capital projects. We did include council recommendations for proposed projects, and we developed funding strategies for all those projects. Schedules were also used to support earned interest and interest charge, estimated reserves, capital plans, debt, and investments. All in all, the budget took about 243 files to build. We did it in a compressed timeline, and we do acknowledge that it's missing the 5-year projections. Let's move on to the budget. So operating budget. We were able to present a zero-based 0% tax rate increase this year. Most of that was driven from two elements within the budget. Assessment growth, which is new construction in the municipality, added $401,000 of tax levy. Plus, we recognized all the interest on both the bank balances and the investments. That yield was almost 1.4 million. Because we do build budget to budget, we then subtracted what was budgeted in 2024, which was about $500,000. And that gave us an incremental revenue of $1.3 million. So that $1.3 million is worth almost 7% tax rate increase. That's why we can definitely support a 0% tax rate increase for 2025. Also touching on salary, We kept staffing pretty much the same as 2024. However, we did add a 0.25 FTE for fire inspections. Budgeted full-time equivalents within the municipality increased then from 84.55 to 84.8. Salary cost increased by $239,000. And that was a combination of reducing overtime, adding in the 0.5 FTE. We also built in a cost of living adjustment of 2% for all staff, which is aligned with our QP contract, and adjustments on several job roles. Benefits, including both government remittances and our Manulife staff benefit package, increased from $2 million to $2.1 million. Continuing with operating, we were able to maintain approximately $4 million of tax levy directed to capital. You can see by this chart here, the tax levy is about 18.1 million. We do add in about another 5.9 million of other revenue. And that's spread across supporting operations by 20 million, supporting in-year capital at 1.7 million, and providing for future capital at 2.2 million. So when you look at the in-year capital and future capital, the 3.9 is very close to last year at 4.2 million. New items in this budget, we wanted to include a community grants, $50,000 in that grant. We're setting aside tax funding for a police reserve of 1/2 of our provincial funding that we received in 2025. So that reserve is at 197,000. Other items of interest, fire vehicle and equipment reserve was increased from 240 to 340. Historically, that reserve typically runs 400 to 500,000. It's been decreased over the last couple of years. We're just slowly trying to bring that back up. We're transferring $1.8 million into the infrastructure reserve, and that's really to add into the in-year capital of 1.7. We are a little bit low for new capital this year, but we do have a lot of carryover capital. We wanted to maintain that funding going into capital, and therefore we put 1.8 million into infrastructure reserve. As you're already aware, increased cost for the OPP service. OPP increased by 340,000. That was after reducing for provincial relief. Planning went up by 248,000. 2024 budget was budgeted at only 3 months. We bumped that up to 12 months. That's why the extra cost. And IT related cost was truly zero based with each license and all the programs that we run here. And that went up by $126,000. Okay, we'll touch on capital. So there are 59 capital projects in this budget, totaling a cost of $15.4 million. 19 of those projects are carry forward from 2024, plus 40 new projects in 2025, which do include 5 from council. That's a little bit small, I apologize. Estimated costs there, we did try to group these 59 projects into grouping, so you can see there the $15.4 million in total cost. The funding strategy, $6.3 million of that is carryover from 2024. So that's basically a reserve. Development charges will fund 1.9 million. Grants, 1.6 million. Reserves, 3.1 million. Rates from water and wastewater will fund 875,000. And taxes, as you saw on the previous slide, was 1.7 million. We'll proceed with water and wastewater budget. So the water, the committee and staff had some interesting discussions with water. And so this slide shows you the 2022 rates and the 2023 rates, which were in effect for 2024. And I did bring in the study done by Watson there. You'll see on the far side there. The proposed budget is to really keep the water rates constant to where they were in 2024. You can see here by doing that, we do contribute a small amount to reserve. We're basically charging enough to contribute $359,000 to reserve. Estimated water reserve at the end of the year will be about 1.6 million. Keep in mind for 2026, we are building that reserve because it'll take about 900,000 to do the second phase of the water meters. 2025 water rates, therefore, no change from 2023 and 2024. Wastewater. Same format here. You can see the 2022 and 2023 rates with the 2025. So if we stay with the 2023 rates, which were in effect last year, our wastewater reserve will experience a drawdown of almost $750,000 at $706,000. If we increase those rates slightly, as per the study, we're still drawing down on the reserve, but not quite as much. We'll save $159,440, but still require a drawdown of just over $500,000 on reserve. Estimated wastewater reserve at the end of, if we do increase the wastewater, and that is in the proposed budget, the base charge would move from $80.84 a month to $44.17 a month. However, we are recommending to keep the rate per cubic meter the same at $2.85. If this is approved, the estimated wastewater reserve at the end of the year will be about 600,000. So yes, the proposed budget does increase wastewater rates to match the study. So we wanted to bring this together and show the impact on the average homeowner. The assessed value, the average assessed value in Central Elgin's $278,000 for home. Keep in mind that is from 2016. It hasn't been adjusted as of yet. But this is an all-in view. So if you look at the taxes for Central Elgin, the budget does have a 0% tax rate increase, so there will be no change for our share of the taxes. Elgin County, I believe they did pass a 1.49% increase on taxes, and there are no changes to school board taxes. So you can see by the slide there, the total taxes for 2024 for an assessed value of $278,000 would have been $46.52. That is increasing to $46.80. And it's interesting when we look at it per month. In 2024, the average homeowner would have been paying $387 versus the new rate at $390. Now, if we look at it all-inclusive and add in water and wastewater, water, there's no change. So what the average homeowner paid last year will be the same as this year. Wastewater, there will be a small increase, which will impact your total water and wastewater bill, changing it from $148.30 to $151.63. And again, that's assuming 11.8 cubic meters per month. Combined total shifts from $535 to $541, or a 1.06% increase. With that, any questions?
Yeah, well, Mr. Jansoon, you have a fan. I think what I'd like to do is before we move to questions, can I get a mover and a seconder to put the budget item on the floor, please? Councillor Bachman and the Deputy Mayor.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Bogman, seconded by Deputy Mayor Noble, that Schedule A to Staff Report DFS 325 be approved, that the 2025 capital budget in the amount of $15,409,389, as outlined in Schedule B to Staff Report DFS 325 be approved, that the 2025 water rates and wastewater rates, as outlined in Schedule C to Staff Report DFS 325 be approved, that the treasurer be authorized to establish new reserve funds as a result of the 2025 budget, that the treasurer be directed to develop a community grant program and report back to council for consideration, and that the deputy clerk be authorized to prepare all necessary bylaws to implement the above recommendations.
All those in favor? Sorry. Oh, well, I guess we're not in favor because we're still debating. Apologies, especially with a full house. I made a mistake. Questions or comments? Councillor Watson.
Yeah, through you, Mayor, to Dave or the rest of the council. Had some time to reflect on this budget, and the one thing I didn't really like after a while looking at it was the Erie Rest parking as well. So could we make an amendment that the capital budget of 2025-36 Erie Rest parking law expansion be removed from the 2025 capital plan?
Do you have a seconder? Do we have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Bachman.
Mayor Sloan, we have an amendment moved by Councillor Watson, seconded by Councillor Bogman, that capital project 2025-36 regarding Erie Rest Beach parking lot extension be removed from the 2025 capital plan.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Griffin. Order in the court, order in the court. Sorry.
Thank you, through you,
Councillor
Mr.
Griffin,
Mayor.
please, sorry.
Thank you. I agree that it's a conversation that needs to be had. And I was thinking as well about the North Shore Resiliency Group, and I actually had a conversation with a member of them earlier today who had presented to us a few months ago. And I was thinking, if we already have a certain amount of money allocated to spend in this space, and if flooding is one of the primary concerns here and the environmental impact is a concern, what if instead of altogether removing that budget line, we decide how much of it we would be willing to keep in place to have that conversation with the resiliency group about what could be done to enhance the dune?
Do I have any other questions or comments before I make a comment? So I think we have an amendment. What I'd like to do is vote on the amendment. And if you have any changes, Councillor Griffin, you can make them after and you can make your own amendment. Is that the will of council? Okay, is that fair? Are you okay with that, Councillor? Okay, so the motion has been read by Ms. Leach. Deputy Mayor.
Through you, Mayor, I'm just gonna, we're always trying to solve problems at this table. And like, I think this whole process was brought forward with some problem that our Ward 1 councilor was trying to kind of work through with the whole parking thing. Is there still a problem down there if we don't increase any parking? Like if we didn't add 6 spots or 12 spots down there on Erie Rest, is there still going to be a problem? I know after talking to Councillor Graham that there is a problem down there with parking, and I don't know. I know we're going to vote on this, but is there still going to be a problem down there that we have to figure out how to solve? Because I realize we have a little bit of money in the budget that was put there to solve a problem. How do we solve that? Because we're still going to have a problem there. I know everybody kind of works on trying to solve problems here at this table.
So respectfully, we have a $70,000 budget item for a parking lot. Okay, the amendment is to remove that from the budget. Okay, so if you, as I say to Councillor Griffin, Deputy Mayor, if you wish to make an amendment afterwards that money be attributed to a parking lot, a feasibility study, that's your prerogative. And I welcome anything from the council, from you or Councillor Griffin. What I'd like to know is we have a budget document that's been put forward I've got an amendment on the floor with a seconder, and I'd like to vote on it if that's okay. Is that okay with you? So if there's anything further, we would do it as a follow-up amendment. The amendment that's been forwarded is to have the current expansion, $70,000 removed. Is everybody clear? Is that okay? And if you want to make amendment after to the budget to put some money in for it, I'll leave the floor open. Councillor Graham.
I just have, through you, Mr. Mayor, I just have a question to the CAO or to Mr. Brooks. Was because my understanding was that the money was put into the budget to examine the situation down there and come up with possible solutions, not necessarily just build the parking lot, but to basically investigate what the issues are and how we resolve those. So if we can just clarify that,
Ms.
that would be
Hurd?
great.
Certainly. Through, sorry, through the mayor to Councillor Graham, and I'll ask Mr. Brooks to supplement accordingly. What council did was provide staff with the direction to investigate the feasibility and the cost as it relates to building a parking lot in Erie Rest Beach. Council agreed to us staff preparing a business case as it related to building the parking lot, and we presented that to council as part of the budget document.
Councillor Graham? Okay. Amendment on the table. We have a mover and a seconder. All those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? It's off the books. Councillor, please, Councillor Graham or Deputy Mayor or Councillor Griffin, do you want to follow up with an amendment, please? We'll need some time to write something out, but I'm willing to, as I said, I wanted it to be clear. And now if there's something that the Deputy Mayor wants to put forward or you want to put forward, Councillor Griffin?
Thank you through you, Your Worship. I don't know how much is commonly useful to the North Shore Resiliency Group for collaboration, but if, for example, we took and set a baseline like up to, say, 5,000 of that for native grasses and things for the dune area to bolster its resiliency. I know they're doing similar work in Bayham and Long Point area to protect their local wildlife and their dunes. And if flooding is a concern and people would like to see this protected, that's absolutely something where they have some funding for studies. If we were to put some forward that we were willing to spend on bolstering the ecology there, then maybe that would be something to promote the health of the overall area and reduce flooding.
Okay. Deputy Mayor, did you have an amendment that you wanted to put forward?
No, my comment was just about staff put that report together and they put it on the budget because there was a challenge in that area. So I'm just, if we have a challenge in that area,
So I'm actually going to have Ms. Hurd comment on that, please.
I appreciate that.
Certainly, thank you. Through the mayor to the deputy mayor. So again, the reason why you saw that business case on the included as part of the budget documentation is because we received direction from council asking us to do that work. So that was the impetus of bringing that business case forward for the budget for the budget consideration.
Deputy Mayor, please.
Okay, thank you. I misunderstood that. I thought that came from staff. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Graham, please.
Yeah, I would like to put a motion for an amendment so that staff can investigate some solutions for the difficulties that we're finding in that area.
If it's not financial, does it go through the budget? Mr. Jensen?
Mr. Mayor, that project's worth 92,000, just to clarify. And
Sure. So I'm not quite sure here. I had quoted 70, I apologize. 58 spaces, 70,000, but it's 58 spaces was 92,000?
Yes, it was
Okay.
70.
So that amendment's passed. That's been removed from the budget. So Councillor Graham is discussing. Ms. Hurd, Councillor Graham. Ms. Hurd, please. Thank you.
Thank you, through yourself, to Council, Councillor Graham and I we're just speaking in regards to what the cost would be in relating to conducting some sort of feasibility of the parking issues in that area. And I recommended to Councillor Graham that perhaps a separate notice of motion at a following meeting would be appropriate to allow us to, as staff, to understand the cost that it would take to do such feasibility study. 'Cause at this time, I don't know what.
Okay, so it won't be related to the budget. Do you want, are we going to do a notice? You want to do a notice of motion at another meeting? Okay, so go ahead, sir. Go ahead, ma'am. Go ahead, Councillor, sorry.
On a completely unrelated note, or do we have to vote on anything else? On a completely unrelated matter, so when it comes to water and wastewater, I would like to see those rates evened out so that there's no increase to the taxpayer. And Mr. Jansoon and I had talked about that. There were a couple options that he gave for council to consider today so that there's no increase on anyone's water and wastewater bills. Mr. Jansoon, if you could just kind of run through those for us and then we could vote on them, that would be great.
So if we've got an amendment on the floor, you're going to need a seconder? Is that correct? Yeah. So first of all, Councillor Graham has an amendment about water. Do you have a seconder? I know, because you guys were talking. So we have an amendment on the table. Councillor Graham, I apologize. Two of our colleagues, I'm just teasing, were busy at other work of the council. So would you like to give your amendment again, please, so that we can find if there's a seconder available? Thank you.
That the 2025 residential water rates be amended to the 2022 base rate of 32.31 and the per cubic meter charge of $3.24 to achieve a combined monthly water and wastewater bill equal to the 2024 billing. So basically that the water bills in combination with the wastewater bill would not be an increase for any of the residents in the municipality.
Need a seconder for the amendment, please? Councillor Connors.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Graham, seconded by Councillor Connors, that the 2025 residential water rates be amended to the 2022 base rate of $32.31 and the per cubic meter charge of $3.24 to achieve a combined monthly water and wastewater bill equal to 2024 billing.
Questions or comments on the amendment? Councillor Griffin.
Thank you. Through you to Dave. If we make this change, how much more damage are we looking at doing to our reserves, and how is this going to impact our long-term ability to manage our water?
It was on the slide, but you can jump in there if you want, Dave. It was 591, difference of 145,000 approximately.
I thought it was closer to 180.
Okay, that's right. About 3,700 times 4 times 12. So between 160 and 180 is my rough estimate. Okay. So questions or comments? Oh, sorry, Councillor Griffin. Is that about approximate what the difference would be to the reserves for wastewater?
Thank you. Yes. I think it's important for us to see when we're actively moving into the red.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Councillor Watson.
Through you, Mayor. Yeah, we had budget committee meetings and we talked about all this. I think we leave what we talked about the same. Could you call the vote on this?
I think it's interesting because we have an audience here and I appreciate the passion and the comments of both Councillor Graham, or all Councillor Graham and all councillors. Councillor Watson, I realize that the staff put forward a budget this evening, which I think is exemplary. We have equality throughout. Ms. Hurd has been heard to say that this is the first time in her, how long is your history in municipal affairs? Over 25 years, that she's presented a 0% budget. I know that certain people look at that as, that we're not saving for a rainy day, but this council and this mayor worked for about 14 months on an agreement with the city of St. Thomas, which resulted in $15 million to the corporation and 7,200 cubic meters of wastewater, which will come on as soon as St. Thomas builds a plant at the north end of St. Thomas. We lost 1,200 acres of industrial land, which many people at this table ran on, saying that the only hope to lower the water rates was to have an industrial base. We lost that. And in compensation, we got $15 million and 7,200 cubic meters, which has been valued at between 50 and 75 $50 and $75 million, which will not hit until down the road. So that plant isn't to be built until 27. So although I agree with those who think that there is not a lot in putting it up, I believe that we're $15 million ahead of where we were 12 months ago. So for that reason, I support Councillor Graham's amendment. And if there aren't any other discussions, I'll call the vote. Councillor Griffin, please.
Thank you. Through you, I do think it's important for us to note that that $15 million can only go into so many projects. And if we're saying that that 15 million makes a difference to whether we make decisions about water, we're implying that we're going to solve water problems with $15 million, which we could, but we do have a community that's rural as well that lives with wells and septic systems. And if we have a long-term intention to invest from that money into our water system rather than to things that affect the entire population, ultimately what we are doing is taking the loss of the total community and investing it into one very specific part of the community. There must be things that we could look at in the long term with that $15 million that would benefit all members of our public equally.
So I think, if I may respond to that, we have, for the greater good in the province of Ontario, people that don't have children that pay for education. In fact, I think Mr. Jensen put up here tonight what we would be paying as an average Central Elgin resident towards school. But the benefit of an educated society is that hopefully down the road, there's benefits for all. Anyone in Central Elgin has the ability to hook into our water system, which we provide and maintain in the safest manner as regulated by the province of Ontario. The people that have brought us thus far have been contributing towards the debt and have taken care of the management, everything about that service, so that when someone comes onto it, we charge them for the hookup. But I believe that it's a fundamental right for us to provide safe drinking water for the whole of Central Elgin. And if someone wants to hook onto our water, then that's fine. Councillor Bachman.
Just a quick comment on the moving of money. Taking money out of reserves does not mean we're coming in at zero. We're drawing money off a savings that we've already established. So we're taking money out of an account to pay for something that we should be paying for currently. So that's how I see it. We're drawing off of one to pay the other.
And I respect that view. Any other questions or comments?
Thank you. Through you. Yes, it is absolutely the right of everyone to have clean drinking water, and it's absolutely our responsibility to make that possible. That is made possible through many things, including hookup water as well as well and septic. But it's absolutely not true that everyone in our community has access to hook up to it. Just until this summer, I was living out on Centennial at my family farm, and before that with my ex out on Roberts Line, and in neither of those places did I have the opportunity to hook up to any of our systems that we work with. And I believe when I've looked at the numbers that about 20% of our population does not have access at least to either the septic or to the well water. So that would be a fifth of our population that is disadvantaged by this decision.
Appreciate your comments. Councillor Graham.
So over the course of the last 2 years while we've been in office, we have had a 0% raise in our taxes that we've passed here at council. Within those 2 years, the first year was, I believe, 1.6 million that we had a surplus, even with a 0% tax rate. And then this year, I believe it was somewhere around 600,000. So getting close to a $2 million surplus. So we're looking at, sorry, Mr. Mayor, what was the amount? $140,000?
65.
$165,000. So we're not necessarily taking any money, stealing from Peter to pay Paul there. We have a surplus already from the last 2 years of $2 million. As well, if we're talking about that we should be looking at the $10 million that we currently have in the bank from St. Thomas for when they took our industrial lands, and that it should be used for the community at large. I think we would all be hard pressed to see one specific area or one specific project that money goes to, that it serves the entire community. So we look at something like the lights at Turvey Park. They only serve Lyndhurst. We look at stop signs, a stop sign that we put in at Belmont, that only serves Belmont. We look at all the different money that we put into Port Stanley, that serves Port Stanley residents. So each time we're doing that, it's a bit of a flawed logic to say that we have to use our money so that it helps everybody within this community for the exact same project. This is a project that we're talking about with water and wastewater rates that I know that's one of the things that I ran on was taxes, fiscal responsibility, and water wastewater rates. So to say that we have to make sure that it suits or that it serves every single person in our community is, in my opinion, a flawed logic, because there's no project that we've done, I don't remember, in the 2.5 years or almost 2.5 years that we've been here that has helped every single person in our community.
Thank you. An animated debate. Any other comments or questions? I'll call the vote. All those in favor of the amendment proposed by Councillor Graham? Opposed? That carries. Thank you.
Could we please record that vote?
Sure. Ms. Leach?
Councillor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Griffin,
No.
Councillor Watt,
No.
Councillor Con,
No, sorry, yes, yes. No.
Councillor Bogman,
No.
Deputy Mayor Noble,
Yes.
Mayor Sloan.
Yes.
That's carried.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the budget? Councillor Griffin?
Thank you, through you. I'm glad that that's all right. Thank you. I'm glad that we allocated the money that was requested by Plains to cover the work that they do in our cemetery. And if coming from the community grant that we've been discussing is the best thing to do in the moment, that makes sense. But I do think it would be worth us directing that in future, it should be additional money allocated into our cemeteries, because really, this is not something for the benefit of Plains Baptist. This is something that serves our cemetery.
Misheard. But you want this added to the budget? Because we're still discussing the budget, Councillor Griffin.
Yes, did we not just talk about the letter that we received, and was there not conversation about allocating it into a community grant fund that's still hypothetical within our budget?
Yes. Ms. Hurd?
Thank you, through your worship. Through your worship, to Councillor Griffin. So the intent of the community grant program will be for the treasurer to bring back a report and the request, a program and a report to council for consideration regarding what would be eligible, what would not be eligible at that time. Those requests will be vetted against that. And then it's by no means are we saying that that money will be allocated to either of the cemeteries that are requesting it. We'll vet it through that point, and then at that time you can have, you can make a further determination on how you want to proceed.
Is that okay, Councillor Griffin? Okay. Deputy Mayor, please.
Through you, Mayor. So that cemetery that we're talking about, that one doesn't fall under the same category as some of our other cemeteries that we pay for. We pay for maintenance.
I don't know.
Through your worship, to Councillor, to the Deputy Mayor, I'm not aware. I know at this time we do provide, and maybe Mr. Brooks knows, but we do provide services already for that, for the Plains Cemetery.
Any other questions related to the budget? Councillor Griffin, please.
Thank you. Yes, through you. I do appreciate the work that's being done on the budget, but I am concerned about our reserves. And one of the ones that I really did remark upon, both during the presentation and my own reading, was that we're only putting something to the tune of 300,000 into our fire reserve, when the amortization that best practice would look for us to try to match is in around 700,000, which means that we're paying less than half in. We're about $400,000 behind what we should be expecting to pay. That worries me that if anything goes wrong later, or if there are any capital needs for fire services later, we are not keeping up, and we may create a tax shock for the community if we suddenly have to pay for something unexpected, or we may fully be unable to afford something. Is
So-
it possible for us to discuss actually trying to keep up with amortization?
Well, I can ask Mr. Jensen, but sir, do you want to comment on it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the funding for your request would come through taxes. You are right. Amortization in fire is about 800,000. We're putting 340 into reserve. That's about half. For every 180,000, that's a tax rate increase of 1%. So to match amortization would mean a fairly hefty tax increase.
Great. Any other questions or comments on the budget? Seeing none, I have to vacate the chair. Oh, final vote is amended on the budget motion. All in favor? Opposed? And that's carried.
So the next motion related to the budget is that the 2025 wage increase of 2% for all eligible non-union staff, including council members, be approved for the 2025 effective January 1st, 2025. A mover and a seconder? Councillor Bachman, Councillor Connors? Any discussion? All right, all in favor? Motion carries.
Thank you to the Deputy Mayor. Bylaws. Can I get a mover and a seconder for the bylaws, please? Deputy Mayor, Councillor Griffin, thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Councillor Griffin, that bylaws 2025-14, 2025-15, and 2025-16 be read a first time and passed.
Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. The bylaw to confirm the proceedings. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Bachman and the Deputy Mayor, thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Bachman, seconded by Deputy Mayor Noble, that bylaw 2025-17 be read a first time and passed.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Adjournment. Mover and a seconder. Councillor Bachman, Councillor Griffin, thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Bachman, seconded by Councillor Griffin, that the special meeting of council dated Monday, March 24th, 2025, be adjourned at 8:20 p.m., with the next council meeting to be scheduled for Monday, April 14th, 2025 at 7:00 p.m.
All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Meeting's adjourned. Thanks, folks, for joining us here as well as online.